It is another edition of the On the Mic podcast. The episodes roll along all week and into the weekend. We're recording this on the day of UFC 270, but it will be out after the event. But to join me, I mean, I don't even know how long this man's resume is, but it is a quality resume. He's play-by-play for Triller Fight Club. He's a host for PBC and TGB Promotions. He is also now a part of, you see me wearing the UFC, but when I throw it to him, you'll see him wearing Eagle FC. One and only a good friend of mine, a great mentor of mine, Ray Flores. Sir, how are you?
Mike, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to join you. And yes, I am rocking my Eagle FC sweatshirt. Really excited about their US debut coming up on Friday night.
Yeah. We'll get into the card. But man, first and foremost, I just want to talk to you. Like, I feel like if it's a boxing promote, if it's anything going on, you're involved. You know, like whatever it is. And there's so many things I could ask you about, but just overall, the last couple of years, especially as I've seen your activity kind of ramp up, you know, as we get out of the pandemic, if you can really say that, but you've really caught a lot of work lately. What's that all been like for you?
It's been amazing, man. I've been very blessed and fortunate to work for some amazing networks, promotions, and just be around this great business of, you know, MMA and boxing. And it was tough for all of us when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. We were away April, you know, through from March through August. That wasn't fun. And we started up, you know, second week of August of 2020. And now that things are hopefully turning the corner, and I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to get back to everyday life. But after the pandemic, or after we started getting back, I was really fortunate to really dive into a lot of work and work a lot with Fox and PBC and Showtime, and then Triller with the Jake Paul Ben Askren fight last year, now Eagle FC, and diving into different things, doing wrestling on the Big Ten Network the past couple of years. I mean, I've really been fortunate to be around some quality promotions, producers, matchmakers, promoters. I learn a lot every single day.
If there's a spotlight, you're usually around it, right? You just mentioned Jake Paul.
I'm fortunate, man.
You talk about Big Ten Wrestling and Gable Steveson and all the great stuff he's doing and all the great wrestling that goes on in the Big Ten as well. I can't break down Big Ten Wrestling with you, but I literally, if there's a spotlight, you're right near it. And I'm going to tell this quick story to those who, you know, watch this. One of my favorite moments that really encapsulated me with you is you were working at XFO and I was just getting started, not only in covering XFO, but in covering the sport. And out of nowhere, you name dropped me in the middle of like intermission as you were announcing all the like guests that were there. And I was like, what? And our good friend, Matt LaCasio, was like, Ray will always look out for you. And that was pretty cool. So you've always had that little moment, man, with me where it's like, no matter what you do. I remember you came into the Illinois Media School studio where this show used to be hosted. The day after you found out you were going to be hosting the McGregor Mayweather press conference, like, you've always given me a great scoop. And as we move forward to talking about Eagle FC, man, there's really nobody. And for everyone that cares, you encapsulate sports. Like, you embody what it means to be in sports media. Like, you can talk boxing and then talk NFL playoff Sunday. I just love it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to be well versed. And the one thing about it, man, is that I pride myself. Like, I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion. I love how much you're just a grassroots guy. And that's the thing, is that too many people start off in the business. How can I start covering the big events? Well, you started off at the local level. And that's where I think you have to earn your stripes. And when I saw you, I went over to you. I'm like, hey, man, like, you know, if you need anything, give me a holler. Why? Because I was in your position years ago when I was in college at Columbia College in Chicago, you know, almost 17 years ago, you know, and just being a freshman, that goes a long way. I mean, I'm 35 now, but I remember when I was at that spot and I had people mentor me and go reach out to me and say, hey, what can we do to help you out? So I got to pay it forward and really look out for the younger generation. And however I can help out the younger generation, the sport, MMA, boxing, we're all better for it. And we need people like you to be involved, because without the coverage that you bring on a day-to-day basis, who's going to know about what we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying all that. And I'll say this for me, and I don't think I ever really talk about it too much on this show, but I think talking to you is the perfect time to talk about it. Like, I took a massive, and I'm nowhere near your status, but even if people look at this show and want to talk to me, I obviously, you know, open door policy with me. I was covering as you know, I was covering Chicago Bears stuff. I was working with Jason McKee and all these guys that I saw when I was in 2006, when I was 13, 14 years old and they were in the Super Bowl, I'm 22 years old working with these guys and working in radio with these guys. And it was surreal. And then it wasn't working out. And I moved to the Philadelphia area and I came back. And like, I decided on my way home that I wanted to start doing combat sports. So that little moment at XFO, I left the lucrative business. Everyone, like my family said, like, you could have been covering the Cubs and the Bulls and the Bears. I couldn't have, because I had been doing it for 5-6 years already. And I will say this, there are no better mentors than people like yourself. And when it comes to combat sports, you could take all the other pro sports. Nobody in this business, when it comes to media, looks after their own like combat sports. That's not to say that there aren't bad people in this sport. I mean, sometimes I feel like when press credentials are handed out to absolutely the wrong people, but it also goes to show that kind of the youth around this sport as well.
We're a big family, man. And the thing is that in order for boxing, MMA to continue to reach new heights, we need the younger generation to get involved. And how do we do that? When we have enthusiastic people like you that want to cover the sport that we need to embrace instead of worrying about your spot. Not just being honest. I work hard, I do my thing, and I would hope that my spot's secured, no matter where it be or who I work for. So I want to look out for the younger generation. You got questions? Ask me. Hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Doesn't matter. It may take me a day or two to get back to you sometimes. And I got busy weeks. Doesn't matter. If you have something to ask, by all means, like you said, I have an open door policy.
No, I absolutely love that. And man, talk about a younger generation. We're going to jump into boxing before we talk Eagle FC. But you kind of been around something. And the one thing I'll also credit you with, Ray, I'm very vocal about certain opinions in my life. And one I was not willing to let go of was the Jake Paul coming into boxing and the crossover fights. I know you were a part of the Ben Askren fight. I was somewhat hesitant after the first Woodley fight. But as you know, as you've seen fighters in boxing and MMA, at some point, whether you think they belong there or not, you got to give them their flowers. And after the second knockout after the knockout of Tyron Woodley, I had to eat some humble pie, man. What's it been like for you knowing, because you go deeper, you've been around the greatest in the sport of boxing. And then you see a guy like Jake, and I'll ask you about the pay scale and all that. But just as a boxing standpoint, as a boxer, as a fighter standpoint, what do you make of him coming into the sport?
I think initially we were all hesitant as to say, okay, the jury's out. Let's see what the intentions are. But with the people that he has around him, a guy who I respect, and this is no relation to me, even though we have the last name, his trainer, BJ Flores, who is a cruiserweight contender, former cruiserweight contender, and a fantastic analyst in boxing. BJ takes this stuff seriously. Jay and Leon Love, another guy who is a super middleweight, top 10 in the world, still fighting. But Jay's been around for a long time from Michigan. The fact that they've had guys like Andrew Tabiti, who's a cruiserweight, go in there, spar with him. Everything that I hear from those in the gym around him, he takes this seriously. And even though he has a big mouth and he's brash and he's a polarizing figure in boxing and MMA, what I love is that Jake has gone out and said, you know what? I want Amanda Serrano on the co-main event. He actually signed her to a promotional deal. The fact that he wants younger guys and guys that don't necessarily have the biggest name in boxing to be on his undercards. So that was my whole thing. What's Jake going to do? The fact that he's the main event. Is he going to just have nothing but attraction fights underneath him? And I hate that word attraction fights, but these sort of, circus-like fights underneath him, or is he going to have real fights? He's had real fights on his undercard. So his fan base is one that necessarily doesn't follow boxing all the time or combat sports. So you're getting a brand new fan base that are being introduced to the Amanda Serranos of the world, to these guys on the undercard. To me, that's a win-win situation. And he doesn't come out and he's not necessarily knocking boxing. I mean, he may call out Canelo and all this other stuff. Look, I was around Mayweather McGregor, and I thought that was highly unlikely. And it happened. And it was one of the biggest events of all time that I was fortunate to be a part of. And I mean, that just broke records all over the place. So Jake is sort of following similar mindsets, but he takes it seriously. Bottom line, Mike, he is a real fighter and he's taking it seriously. Do I want him to increase his competition? Yeah, but so does he.
Yeah, and you couldn't have said it any better, and I couldn't have said it any better. I will ask, though, you mentioned her a couple times, Amanda Serrano, and I will give this man credit. Fighter pay is a real thing, and I'm not going to bring up the Dana White feud. I think people who try to get themselves involved with Dana White, Jake Paul, they don't see the different sides of boxing pay and MMA pay. And it's just, you're arguing two totally different conversations there. But with that being said, he is looking out for the Amanda Serranos. And you talked about the word attraction fights. I'd argue that Frank Gore and Deron Williams was one of the best fights on the card in the last card for him and Tyron Woodley, you know? And those are two guys who were coming from two totally different sports. It was entertaining. You could see these are guys who put in the time. But back to Amanda Serrano, when we know the stigma around female boxing and women boxing. And Jake has been like, you know what? I'm going to take Amanda Serrano, one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. I'm going to make her a millionaire, and I'm going to just plug her and give her everything she deserves. From your standpoint, from being around the business, how great is that to see?
I think it's wonderful. I think that, you know what, Jake believes in certain fighters and is wanting to go ahead and elevate them. And he's doing that with Amanda Serrano. I thought Amanda Serrano actually was in a pretty good spot because of the fact of what Lou DeBell of DeBell Entertainment was able to do for her. I mean, he did a lot for her. He went to bat time and time again for her. So now that she's with Jake, I think it's only going to increase her visibility, and it already has. So we'll see what the next step is from Amanda Serrano. But I think Jake Paul is certainly a very smart businessman. His events produce quite a bit of fanfare. They draw a lot of attention on social media. And he goes out there and he performs. None of this would be possible, Mike, if he didn't go out there and perform. He performs under the lights. Will that continue? We'll find out as we dive into 2022.
Yeah, I got to ask $1 million question. Who do you think he fights next?
I would hope that the fight with Tommy Fury is saved, because I think that there's still meat on the bone in that fight. To me, I don't necessarily know what happened with the negotiations, but the fight was signed, sealed, and delivered pretty much. And then Tommy got sick and et cetera, or hurt, one of the two. I want to see Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fight, because the Fury name is such, like, I use the word polarizing, but that's the truth with Jake Paul. He's a polarizing figure. Same thing with Tyson Fury. Now, I know Tommy and Tyson are two totally different people, but Tommy's father, John Fury, very proud man, very vocal. He is a big personality. Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, big personality, just is certainly a lightning rod for attention in boxing. How will Tommy follow in that footsteps? Will Tommy be ready for the big stage? It's been shown that Jake is ready for the big stage, but now Tommy has to come in here, and I want to see those guys get it on. And I think that there's still an audience for it.
I'm going to expose myself for a second, Ray. There's been a lot of big fights, and I haven't picked up the phone and asked you to come on the show in the boxing world, because I feel like me trying to talk boxing with you is like if I go out to watch UFC 270 and the casuals that'll sit at the bar wanting to talk to me because they know I love this sport. I don't want to insult your intelligence on the sport sometimes, but I'm not as invested, and I think people do know that. But that is why I give great people like yourself a platform to come in, because I do want to talk about it. I do want to learn more. And I'll ask this before I get into my big question in boxing. Man, you've been a part of Triller, and people can say what they want about Triller. It's quite a show. It's a spectacle. What's it been like for you being a part of that crew?
I love it, man. You know why? Because it's different. And the thing is that it gives you a little bit of something for everybody. So doing the Jake Paul fight, the Ben Askren fight, Justin Bieber performing. I mean, Mario Lopez, Pete Davidson running around, Snoop Dogg, just a unique cast of entertainers and individuals and performers. Then we followed it up, and we were down in Florida with the Vitor Belfort Evander Holyfield fight in boxing. Donald Trump commentating, whether or not you love him or you hate him. He's the former president of the United States commentating boxing. 50 Cent on the show, along with Sean Porter. Just wild, man. And now that we got Triad Combat, when we saw Kubrat Pulev knocking out Frank Mir, Metallica performing, over 22,000 people at Globe Life Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Now we're following it up on February 26th with Jason Aldean performing. I'm not even a country music fan, but everybody knows Jason Aldean. He's just a major country music superstar. And the fact that we got Junior Dos Santos, Kubrat Pulev, we got Vitor Belfort, Chad Dawson, the Triad. The fact that I was in the Triad the day before the first Triad Combat. I took off my shoes. I got in the triad. I literally took 2 steps and I was in the middle of the ring. You don't have room to hide in there, bro. These guys have to go at it. And that's exactly what they did on November 28th. And I think we follow it up on February 26th. And I'm pumped for it, man. Ryan Kavanaugh he's like a mad scientist. The guy is, always thinking of new ideas and concepts and trying to apply them. You got Nigel Lithgow from American Idol, who's the producer, one of the smartest minds that we've ever seen in television. You got Thorsten Meyer, who's a brilliant COO, who's just on his game, making sure everyone's taken care of. It's a great team over there, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to be a part of it.
I'll say this. I feel like all Triller events are treated like a Super Bowl of combat sports. It's incredible. Whether you agree with, the way they go about things, the way the show is, if you think it's a spectacle or not, like you could sign me up for that all day long. I get mad that, when I first got introduced to covering the UFC, one of my first events was UFC 189. And I was like, oh, cool. So we get live performances and walkouts all the time. And Sinead O'Connor singing Conor McGregor.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, and then Dana's like, yeah, no, we don't do that. It takes too long. What? Like, now in 2022, like if we're paying $75, like Dana, let's make it a spectacle. Let's make it a spectacle.
I'll give you a quick story real quick on the first Triad Combat. And I thought it was so cool. So I'm there. We literally go to Metallica right before the main event. So Metallica's performing, fireworks, fire. They're just rocking it for 20 minutes. I go back to get ready to go for the main event, and they're in the middle of their set. I look over, Michael Buffer is there, right? Because he's the announcer. I look over at Michael, and Michael goes, aren't they incredible? I'm like, yeah, this is freaking amazing. That moment I'll always have with me because you have a legend, Michael Buffer, who's been there, done that, seen it all. And the fact that he looks over at me as the play-by-play guy and says, isn't this awesome? I'm like, yeah, this is freaking awesome. And then we get into the main event. We get a crazy finish with Kubrat Pulev knocking out Frank Mir. I mean, that's what Triller is all about. That's what Triller Fight Club does on a consistent basis. You mentioned it. They don't spare any expense, and they bring in, because we're about the fights, but we're also about entertainment.
Yeah, and I think when you put on these great shows and you have these different type of fights and then different matchups, you have to do something. You absolutely have to do something. And I'm not here to talk about promoters going after promoters, but people say what they want about Triller and this and that or other promotions, and it's just like, just enjoy the product that's being presented to you. That's one thing I have taken from watching you, because again, I can't sit here and we can't talk about an undercard of a boxing event. Now, could I talk to you about the undercard of UFC 270? I absolutely can. Can I, ask you some questions about Eagle FC? I absolutely plan on it. But for me, I'm always going to take what event is right in front of me, and I'm going to enjoy it for what it is. Because one thing I learned from you, and it wasn't like you went out of your way to say this, but it was just something I just saw. And it was just, you have to respect every single person who enters that cage. You have to. Like, you absolutely have to. You may be a fan of the person they're fighting. You may be friends with them. You may be family with them. But at the end of the day, they are getting into the triad. They're getting into some form of combat sport. And for that reason alone, you have to respect them. Even though I wasn't a Jake Paul fan, eventually, and that is, and I can tell you this, off air, but that was a more personal thing from a small interaction. And does that mean that I would never? No. If Jake Paul ever granted me, an opportunity to talk to him, I would 100% talk to him. I got 1,000 questions for Jake Paul. And if he ever heard me say, bad things, I eat humble pie. I think you'd know better than anybody. I would eat humble pie all day long. But, before we get into MMA, because we are here to talk about Eagle FC, I'm so excited to talk to you about that. Like, literally so excited. When it comes to boxing, we're talking at the end of January. Ray, what are, I don't want to say give me your top 3, but what are some of the biggest fights or the biggest things you're looking forward to in 2022 in the state of boxing?
I hope we get Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. I really think that fight needs to happen. I mean, and that's if Errol Spence beats Yordenis Ugas. But what I want to see is I want to see unification at 147. Right now, Errol Spence holds 2 titles. Yordenis Ugas holds the other one. And Terrence Crawford is holding on to the WBO title. I want to see unification. I want to see 147 unified. I think the fans deserve it. I think the fighters want it. I think the networks want it. So let's make it happen. By the end of this year, I want to see the welterweight division unified. Another thing that I would be hoping to see is I want to see, and I think that Mayweather Promotions is going to set him up for a massive fight, because I thought he looked damn good in the win against Isaac Cruz. And I don't think people gave enough credit to Isaac Cruz heading into that fight. I did, because I know what Isaac Cruz is capable of. I can't wait to see Gervonta Davis in a massive fight against either Vasily Lomachenko, against either Devin Haney, George Kambosos, Ryan Garcia. I want to see Gervonta in there against one of those high-profile names. And I think Mayweather Promotions with Leonard Ellerbe and Floyd Mayweather, I think they're going to make it happen. And that's not me just being an optimist. It's the way that Gervonta has been built. Also, I can't wait to see who Canelo fights next, because anytime Canelo fights, it is without question the number one talked about thing in the sport. This guy, without a doubt, is the number one pound for pound fighter on the planet. He gets better and better. He is a fan favorite. There is this passion that fans have for him. They love him. They adore him. And you know what? He just loves to go out there and test himself. I saw him. I interviewed him back on New Year's Day in Miami. He was there to support his teammate, Frank Sanchez, who's a heavyweight, under his trainer, Eddie Reynoso. And he was there in silk pajamas, had the sunglasses. He was enjoying life. But the thing is, Canelo wants to be great. He's been great, but he wants to keep challenging himself. He has millions in the bank, but the guy is a fighter, and he knows he comes from the rich boxing country of Mexico, and he takes that with such a great deal of responsibility. The electricity, the energy, when Canelo has a fight in the arena or in the stadium, it is second to none, man. I can't wait to see who Canelo fights next.
Brad, I got to ask you just a couple more boxing, and I promise we will talk MMA. But, me being the casual guy here, I got to say, I was really looking forward to the Caleb Plant-Canelo fight. Obviously, Canelo did what he does. But I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the story. I don't know what it is. But I love Caleb Plant. What did you make of Caleb Plant, and where do you see him going from, rebounding off of the Canelo fight?
I think Caleb Plant needs to be given a ton of credit for what he's been able to do in his career. Here's a guy who came from the middle of Tennessee, right outside of Nashville, literally moved to Las Vegas. He actually put this on Instagram a couple of days ago. He goes, I moved to Vegas in 2016 with $500 in my pocket, and I wouldn't have it any other way. He's a proud family man with his lovely wife, Jordan Plant, who I've known for years. They have built this empire. The fact that he was the former IBF super middleweight champion of the world. And this is something that I say. I told this to Mario Barrios this week. I told this to Keith Thurman this week. They have a fight February 5th in Las Vegas on Fox Sports PBC pay-per-view. That's a cheap plug, but you got to throw it in there anyway.
Do it.
One loss doesn't define and doesn't mean you're done. That is very much a boxing way of thinking. And the reason why is because Floyd Mayweather had this focus, this emphasis on being undefeated. And that's fine. That works for Floyd. But Floyd is one of the all-time greats. We cannot hold everybody to the same standard as Floyd Mayweather. That's like holding every NBA player that is a star to the same standards as Michael Jordan. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds?
Or every NFL quarterback to Tom Brady.
Exactly. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. It's okay to lose a time or two or four or five. Manny Pacquiao, I forgot how many losses he had, but is his legacy diminished because of those losses? No, we love him. Why? Because he took a chance to fight the world's best. We need to stop holding fighters accountable to the same standards as that of the Floyd Mayweathers of the world. Or even I hear it all the time. Oh, well, these guys aren't like the fighters of the 80s, the Ray Leonards, the Roberto Durans, Turker. I'm not saying I respect, and those guys are the reason why we're here today. But stop comparing them. They're different eras, different mentalities. And also athletes are bigger, faster, stronger. The human brain doesn't get stronger, but the athlete and muscles and speed and quickness, because of science, has. Therefore, yeah, these guys don't fight as much, but also they do a lot more damage to each other because the brain's not getting stronger.
Yeah. And I'm going to just piggyback off that and just say, like, as a UFC MMA guy, I look at the guy who got me into the sport, Conor McGregor. People go, oh my God, he lost. That's fine. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Dustin Poirier is a better example as of recent history. Here's a guy that everyone's like, uncrowned champ. And then Charles Oliveira beats him, and they're like, oh, well, like, what? Like, Amanda Nunes, people forgot Amanda Nunes lost before she lost to Juliana Pena. And it's like, that doesn't take away from everything that they've done. Like, unfortunately, and I do think for the other professional sports, football, basketball, baseball, we've gotten so nostalgic in those sports, and fan bases are always going to be nostalgic, that if you try to be a fan of both the NFL and combat sports, you try to use let's say your fanhood as a Bears fan, and you try to apply it to combat sports. Well, these guys don't fight, and these girls don't fight like, back in the day, and girls weren't even fighting. Yeah, well, now they are. And I would take some girls in fights against guys. Like, I just would. That is the honest to God's truth. With that all said, though, the other casual boxing question I would have for you is, man, I loved the last 2.5, 3 years at the top of the heavyweight division. And, the Tyson Fury story is one that books, movies, TV, anything could be made out of. And it's something that individually and personally has driven me, through hard times. I think if you don't know the story of Tyson Fury, I think, anybody should go look it up. But more than that, like, when Tyson and Deontay Wilder were going through this, like, this carried the spotlight for boxing. This was just, but now, okay, so Tyson gets the job done again, in the trilogy last fall. And now we're like, where are we? And like, what can happen? What do you think, Ray Flores, can happen at the top of the heavyweight division that keeps that momentum going in 2022?
Well, it's going to be hard to top the third fight that we saw with Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. I was very fortunate to call that fight alongside Christina Pancha for the international audience. That fight was, I love the Rocky movies. I think you do as well. And that was a real life Rocky movie in front of us. That fight was so special. That's one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. That's one of the best fights. They said that's probably one of the best heavyweight fights in 25 years to 30 years. Those guys gave everything. It was better than we thought. I think both guys' stocks rose after that. Even Wilder said, leading into the third fight, I'm mad about the second fight because I wanted to go out on my shield. If I'm going to lose, I want to lose going out on my shield. And damn it, that's exactly what he did. The fact that we had 4 knockdowns before the stoppage, back and forth, the kind of savage display that I saw from both men, being able to climb off the canvas, not once, but twice, Fury getting the job done in the 12th. That's the stuff that you live for. That fight, if there was one fight right now that you would tell me in recent memory, I'm talking about the last 3 or 4 years, why are you a fight fan? Why do you love combat sports so much? I tune into that fight and say, watch this. You can even watch it without the sound off. Just watch, enjoy, pay attention to the body language, the emotion, the energy, the passion.
I could watch that fight 365 days a year and 366 on a leap year. And I know, obviously sports betting has played a part in this, but I remember one knockdown and everybody's going crazy. And I'm like, like, you don't know boxing if you think this is over right now. Like, this is not over. You either didn't see the first fight or you don't know combat sports. This is not over. So everybody's going crazy. People are trying to pick me up off my bar stool. And I'm like, whoa, let's just wait. And I agree with you. One of the greatest fights I know I've ever seen. But with all that being said, Ray, to try and transition over to MMA and what we're here to talk about, and that's Eagle FC. First and foremost, because I can't imagine what your email inbox looks like. I cannot imagine that. But I'm going to stop myself because there is one thing, and I don't want to forget this question.
Yeah.
And excuse my ignorance, but what is your heritage?
My heritage, I'm Mexican.
Okay, so as we're talking on the day of UFC 270, you're a boxing guy, you're an MMA guy, you know all combat sports. Yeah. And in boxing, there's a rich history of Mexican champions and fighters. Mm-hmm. We're talking hours before Brandon Moreno goes out to defend his flyweight title against Deiveson Figueiredo. There was much made about the UFC flyweight division just 2 years ago. It's not going to exist anymore. It's not going to do anything. Like, it's done. Demetrius Johnson went over to one championship or one FC, whatever you want to call it. And you know, Figueiredo, Dillashaw, Cejudo, the belt has, you know, kind of been in flux. Now Brandon Moreno's got it. Just from a Mexican heritage standpoint, having a guy like Brandon Moreno in the UFC hold a belt at a division that nobody cared about, and now he's the co-main event for two of possibly the greatest heavyweights we've ever seen. Ray, what does that mean to you from a heritage standpoint?
It makes me hella proud. It makes me damn proud. The fact that this guy was, I mean, just look at his story. He was cut from the UFC. They told him, they're like, nah, you're not good enough. And instead of him totally look, and this is just, he is a metaphor for life because of the fact that, yeah, you're not always going to be winning in life. That happens. You get knocked down sometimes. But Brandon Moreno didn't say, man, I made it to the UFC. They released me. I'm cut. My career is over. He went back to the drawing board to get better. Then he got back into the UFC. Not only did he get back into the UFC, but he became the flyweight champion of the world. The guy never doubted himself. He picked himself off the canvas, got back in the UFC, and he pretty much made it a point to where you cannot deny me. He had hard work, he had determination, he had a positive mindset. Those three things are what propelled him to where he is. I am so proud of what Brandon Moreno did. I typically, because I am being involved in the business aspect, I try not to have an emotional connection to a particular result or a fighter. I respect them all, and I really do admire them all. But I am absolutely rooting for Brandon Moreno tonight because he comes from the same background that I do. I was born here in the United States and he's Mexican, but there's Mexican blood in my system. And the same thing with him. I don't like Deiveson Figueiredo. I think, I'm not a fan of his right now. Do I respect him as a fighter? Yeah. I don't like his personality. And I hope Brandon Moreno beats him and goes ahead. And at that point, I really hope that the UFC goes down to Mexico with Brandon Moreno, because I think that a homecoming fight for him would be it would be full circle for him, but also take into this account. And this is why I love Moreno's mentality. This is my mentality as well. The fact that he's got 3 other training partners from that little gym in Tijuana on the card tonight. That's what it is to say, I'm going to get here, then I'm going to throw the rope down, and those that were with me from the beginning, I'm going to bring them to the show. And you think that the UFC would be looking at these three teammates of Moreno if he wasn't the UFC flyweight champion of the world? No, and no. But they're on the card. He got his teammates to the dance, the biggest promotion in the world. He got them there. Why? Because he didn't doubt himself. That's the testament of a champion.
I mean, you could sell ice to an Eskimo, right? That was a beautiful cut promo. But honestly, and I can't agree with you more. I hate to say this, I don't want to catch heat for this, but I was watching all the embedded today, the day of the fight, and something just struck me, and I said it to myself, and then I kind of shocked myself. I feel, and I'm with you, right? Because I love Moreno's energy, I love the story, I love everything. Deiveson Figueiredo gives off a Colby Covington Brazil version vibe to me. Like, he just can't accept what's in front of him. Like, you're just like, yeah, okay, you reached the mountaintop, but man. And now it's like, now he's doing it. And I said this on my preview show with Kelly Murphy of Sirius XM, earlier this week. I think both the co-main, and I will ask you real quick about UFC 270, the main event, but I think both the co-main and the main event are all driven by emotion. And yeah, that's great and that sells. But man, if you look at exactly what you said, 4 total people from Brandon Moreno's gym on this card, 3 teammates of his, like, he brought it. And I love John Anik. I have the utmost respect for John Anik. One of my favorite things about John Anik is on weigh-in days, the day before the fights, he always says, for the man or the woman that this card was built around. And he says that about the main event. But man, there's a real debate that this fight card was definitely built around Brandon Moreno as much as it was Francis Ngannou and Ciryl Gane. So I had to get the perspective from you because I do think it's an absolute amazing story and it needs to keep going. I don't know if the UFC wants the main event story to keep going because we have, And like UFC 272, we're going to have Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington, former teammates, roommates, turned rivals, and they'll sell that themselves. But we have such a weird situation, Ray, in this UFC 270 main event. We have, if you ask Francis Ngannou, not former teammates, just training partners, and a bitter coach, for lack of a better term, and Ferdinand Lopez about Francis Ngannou, who I think Ferdinand Lopez is going about it the exact wrong way that you should, leaning into your fighter's biggest moment should not be your biggest moment. That's just my personal feeling.
Agreed.
And, you have that. And then you have this unique situation of Francis Ngannou getting called out by Tyson Fury, knowing his options, knowing his worth, and he's on the final fight of his contract. And if he wins, the UFC has no other choice but to bring him back for at least one more fight. Right. All that being put together, what do you make of this main event at UFC 270?
You couldn't write a better story when it comes to drama and subplots. I mean, the only way, I think Dana White even said this, he goes, Vince McMahon couldn't have written a better script. The way that this reminds me of, and this is the absolute truth, is that if you remember back about a little over 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago, in the WWE, when CM Punk was getting ready to wrestle John Cena in Chicago with the WWE Championship on the line. Now, granted, this is scripted. This is sports entertainment. But just to give you an idea, this is the parallel, and I think it's so similar. The fact that CM Punk was in his final day as a WWE contracted sports entertainer, and if and they wanted him to sign an extension, he didn't agree to sign an extension until hours before, in which he won the title. There was a possibility that he could have won the title and not been under contract to the WWE. How crazy is that? The same thing with Francis Ngannou. If he wins this fight against Cyril Gane, he could be the UFC heavyweight champion of the world without technically being under contract to the UFC. Is that insane? And then you got Cyril Gane, his former sparring partner, training partner, with the coach that's upset and that is trying to create the magic that he had with Ngannou in the mix. Like, you can't write this stuff. And also, let me also take it a step further, because I know you're a gambling man, as am I. The fact that Francis Ngannou is an underdog. The guy has put away his last 5 opponents by TKO or knockout. They haven't gone into the 3rd round. It's been 1st and 2nd round. And Ngannou is the underdog on the books at plus money? What?
I'm telling you, there's no better promoter than you, right? And I got to say, and I agree. And I said this to Eric Nixick, the coach of Francis Ngannou. And I'll say this, and I even said it on the previous show. So 2 things here. One, if you go back and look at the Jairzinho Rosenstrike, which he was just getting involved with, the Extreme Couture team, Francis Ngannou was. And you can go back and watch the tape if you're a tape person. There was a little bit of just rush tendencies there. He was just trying to throw to land, and land he did. And the fight was over 20 seconds later. But then if you go watch the Stipe fight, the rematch against Stipe Miocic, patience. It was calculated chaos with patience. And I think that was the best way to describe Francis coming into this. And so, Ferdinand Lopez, you might know what you know about Francis, but fighters evolve. Same thing for Cyril Gane. He's going to evolve. But I can't explain to anyone how Francis is the underdog. But like I said to Eric Nixick, he's the underdog. His old coach is running his mouth. He knows this guy is not a teammate. It's a former training partner. And oh, by the way, the UFC will have no choice but to resign me if I go do what I know I'm willing to do. There's very few people in this world I wouldn't want to piss off, especially on a promotion side. And if I got to say, go out there and prove it to me. If I'm Dana White, I might be sitting backstage waiting for Cyril Gane. I'm sorry, dude. We should have given him a 4-fight deal beforehand. I'm sorry. When Francis knew he was going to fight for the belt and he knocked out Alistair Overeem's soul in Detroit, that should have been the whole thing. He screamed, "Where's the belt?" And they were like, "Yeah, we got it. We got it, Francis. We're going to get to a fight. Please, we're good. We're good." I just don't know that that's the guy that you want to tempt with. Don't tempt your fate with him, because he could go to boxing, and you're a boxing guy. And this is my last one before we go to Eagle FC. But what could he do in boxing? Can he be a draw in boxing?
I don't know, because it's just 2 different schools of thought. I mean, look, Ngannou is somebody that, anybody at this elite level they're world-class prize fighters. So they can adjust, but I mean, it's just different mentalities. I don't mind the crossover fights. I think they're unique. I think they're fun. We get them a lot in Triad Combat, which I think is wonderful. But to say that Ngannou can go into the boxing ring against the most dominant heavyweight champion in the past 10 years in Tyson Fury, I don't know. I'm not going to favor Ngannou. And I say, I would think that I lean heavy towards Tyson Fury. But I think that Ngannou being in MMA and doing what he's done in the octagon, I mean, the guy's a special talent in the octagon. And I know that Ngannou said, that fight's off the table with him and John Jones and stuff. But you know what? If he's able to get past Ciryl Gane, that's the fight that makes sense. And that's the fight that I think needs to happen. And I know John Jones has had his issues in the past and, has his own kind of personal situations to attend to. That's none of my business. I can only look at John Jones for the kind of athlete and the kind of fighter that he is. And he is a once in a generational talent. When you get the opportunity to put two once in a generation guys in the same octagon together against one another, you get something special. But again, that is if Francis Ngannou defeats Ciryl Gane.
Yeah, well, Ray, like I said, you can cut a promo better than anyone else. You could probably have been a wrestling manager if you wanted to be. Yeah, you obviously do play-by-play. You're obviously an analyst, an announcer. You do all of that. And like I said to you earlier, if there's a spotlight, you're around it. And man, I was taken by surprise when I first saw you on the broadcast because we hadn't talked about it. But Eagle FC held a press conference not too long ago to announce Eagle FC 44 goes down January 28th, this Friday in Miami, Florida. First and foremost, how did that all come about?
So I've been talking with them for about a year now. And, they have a really smart, group that they are, putting together events. Rizvan Magomedov, who I think is brilliant. He's been a manager and a coach for a long time, being involved in the business aspect. I've actually known Rizvan for probably about over 12 years because he used to be a manager for, if you remember, he's now in one championship, Yusef Su'adulayev, who used to fight here locally in the Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area. And that's where I met Rizvan. And then I did a few events for the PFL doing some backstage reporting, and I saw him again. And, we kind of kept in contact and, they reached out, last December or last January, talking about, something they were coming up with and they're working on. And then about 3 months ago, I got, a call from one of the producers and they asked me if I was interested. Absolutely. Got them in touch with my agent, who's been great. And, Maury Gostran, who's the same agent as Jay Glazer and has a lot of big names. And, Maury and him talked and they made the deal. And away I am here as the Eagle FC cage announcer and, did that press conference working with Khabib Nurmagomedov. Obviously Ali is fantastic, the manager of Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I mean, brilliant guy, understands the sport, knows talent. And I'm excited to see what we have in front of us because, we got Tyrone Spong, Sergey Hiratanov, also, I'm just really pumped to see the return of Rashad Evans as well. He looks great. I'm really pumped to see Rashad. They signed Kevin Lee. That's exciting as well. I mean, he was a coveted free agent when the UFC parted ways with him. He wasn't on the free agent market long. Eagle FC signed him. I know that Khabib's got plenty of his fighters that from his gym, from the Eagle MMA team, that'll be participating on cards. We'll be down in Miami, small, intimate venue. Plus, you get to watch the fights for free on the FlexCast app. So you got to check it out. You get the first year of Eagle FC for free on the FlexCast app. So you get to watch these badass fights, bro, for free on the app. That's what life is in 2022. They're thinking ahead, and I love it.
And you talked about a lot of things there that I wanted to ask you about. The Flex Arena, first and foremost. Gorgeous arena, if anybody saw the videos. What was it like being in there, and how would you describe that?
It reminds me of like the UFC Performance Center and the Performance Institute, or the Apex is what I meant. I mean, they got so many different, UFC's got so many different buildings and Performance Institute, the Apex. It reminds me of the Apex. And I love it because what's great is that I think they have a capacity of no more than a couple hundred people, like no more than 500 people. and it's going to be very Miami. So it's going to be, like a nightclub atmosphere, real cool, very VIP, intimate venue. I think it's a beautiful facility. They really do a great job of it. I think they're going to have a DJ performing. There'll be certain VIPs that have, bottle service. The fans are going to be able to really, I sat in the seats. When you go to the movies and you sit in like the reclining seats, that's what they got. You're not sitting in these chairs that after 10 minutes you're hurting or you're uncomfortable. You get to lay back in these comfortable chairs, the beautiful recliners, and watch the fights, man. I mean, that's such a great experience for the fans that'll be in attendance. And then for the viewer at home, we got Jen Sturger, we got Cyrus Fees, we got Henry Cejudo, who is now the coach of Davidson Figueiredo. You also have, we just had a lot of talented people that'll be involved. And I'm pumped from a cage announcer standpoint because we're going to do things that are going to be off the wall. You might see me have to go backstage and maybe do an interview, or I might be talking about the odds of a fight because I'm the gambling guy on the broadcast. So who knows, man? We're going to be different. We're going to be unique. We're going to be hard hitting, fast paced, and you're going to get some killer fights.
Yes, you are. And before I have you break down the card very quickly, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do appreciate all the time you give me. The big thing for me is, and people can say, and Dana White can say what he wants, and joking or not, but to have a guy, right, being involved in combat sports as long as you have been, to have a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov go through the career that he went through, do it in the way that he did it, reach the ultimate success that he has, and understand he's going to attach his name to this promotion, and he's going to do things that is going to stand out from everybody else. And there's going to be so many things that Khabib would think about, that not every promoter would think about. And having been there, done that, what do you think, and what does that mean from your standpoint, looking at Khabib attaching his name and being involved as much as he is with the promotion?
So the one thing that I take away from all of this is, what's interesting, and I'll give you a quick little behind the scenes story, is I was within the Eagle FC offices and at the Flexcast Arena. And I remember when Khabib came in with Rizvan and with Ali, and he did a whole tour of the facility. So I was with him on that tour, and he was like, hey, what about this? Like, the fighters need this. Oh, I like this. This is great for the fighters. Khabib is a promoter, but he's fighter first. This guy knows what it means to go from being a pro debuter to being a contender, to being a champion, to being the man, to being the man. You know what I mean? Like, that's what Khabib has done in his career. So he's been in every situation imaginable as a fighter. And I think that's so advantageous because if you're a fighter on an Eagle FC card, you know that the promoter has put himself on the line in that cage. He's done that. He's bled. He's sweat. He's been tired. He's dealt with adversity before. He's been dominant, and he retired undefeated. We mentioned about that rarefied air about Floyd from a boxing standpoint. Khabib's the same way. Undefeated, pure dominance in his career. Father passes away, does one fight, says, I'm done. And now coming back as a promoter. I love it because Khabib is a competitor. And he knows what fighters need, what they want, how they operate. No better person than to rely on a man who has been there in every situation on the planet. And that's what I think Khabib brings to the table. And in talking with Rashad Evans and Kevin Lee, that's one of the things that they said was very enticing about them signing with Eagle FC, because of the fact that they know they're going to be taken care of. Not to say that promotions around the world, that the big promotions don't take care of their fighters, because they do, and they do a great job of it. But Khabib is that guy that could say, just 2 years ago, I was in the cage. What are you talking about? I've been there. And Khabib is very much all about the fighters, and I think it's great.
I absolutely love it. So I'm going to give the floor to you here, Ray. It's Eagle FC 44. Like you said, Flexcast. I believe it is, what is it? Eagle
Flexcast
FC.
Arena.
Yep. And then it's you can get the Flexcast app and you can watch it right there. You can go to eaglefc.com as well. But Friday, January 28th. You mentioned the arena very quickly. It's great to have a couple hundred people, but if Mike Pendleton can't be in the building for one of the future Eagle FC events, like, I don't know.
We're going to make it happen, bro. We'll get you in contact with we'll get you in contact with the PR people. We'll make it happen, bro.
I just love everything about this promotion. And when they announced their state's debut, coming up, obviously here January 28th, I'm going to give you the floor to promote the hell out of this card because there is some great names on this card. But for me, we have all these other promotions, and we have some of these promotions that Dana White goes and pulls from and all of that. And that's all great. But those promotions are considered regional. I think Eagle FC has an opportunity to take center stage and be one with the competition. And with that being said, I mean, we have a Tyrone Spong, Sergey Haratinov main event. We have the return of Rashad Evans. Obviously, you mentioned the signing of Kevin Lee for a March debut. But we also, on this card on January 28th, we have UFC veterans like Ray Borg, and we have Jorgen De Castro. Like, UFC fans, like, these names, right? Your favorite thing about January 28th?
I mean, to me, the main event, I think, is going to be ridiculous when it comes to Tyrone Spong and Sergey Haratanov. Spong's been away from MMA competition for several years, but man, the guy is just chiseled. He's in great shape. He's one of the most prolific strikers in combat sport. And Sergey Haratanov, the guy is a monster. I mean, he's a thick, big, strong human being. Somebody's going to have to give somewhere. And the kind of violence that we're going to see on Friday, January 28th for Eagle FC in that main event. Look, man, and I've told this to people, if you're going to the fight, do not wear white because you might get some DNA on that white jacket of yours because these guys are going to bang, bro. I mean, I can't wait for this fight. The kind of main event that we're going to see, if this fight goes to the ground, I'll be shocked. They're going to just bomb away at each other. Maybe we'll get a jab or two, but we're going to get just guys going at it, throwing big right hands, left hooks, just trying to decapitate each other. Why? Because that's the mindset of Spong. That's the mindset of Haratanov. They've both been hit by some of the baddest dudes walking the earth today. And the fact that they're getting in the cage against each other on Eagle FC's pay-per-view, or not pay-per-view, I always promote pay-per-views, but on FlexCast for free. Come on, man. This is going to be tremendous. Then, look, I am an old school guy. I've been around MMA and been following it since, even the Hoist Gracie, when Hoist Gracie made his debut at UFC 1. So that's how old school I go. But the reason why I bring back nostalgia is because Rashad Evans is making his return to the cage. People are like, oh, Rashad's back, whatever. Rashad looks in great shape. Rashad looks refreshed. Rashad looks like he has still another run left in him. How long that will be in this run, I don't know. But the guy did it at the highest level. Former light heavyweight champion of the world. I remember, I think it was UFC 114 in Las Vegas. This was at the end of May. I forgot what year it was because as you get older, the years just kind of blend together. When Rashad Evans fought Quentin Rampage Jackson, and they hated each other. And when I saw Rashad Evans walk out and I saw Rampage walk out and they went to war against each other, that was special. And to be able for me to work with Quentin Rampage Jackson with Triad Combat, because he's the MMA coach against the boxing side and Shannon Briggs, and not have Rashad Evans be involved in the first Eagle FC MMA card here in the United States, it's freaking awesome, man. I mean, it's like the 15-year-old me is kind of like, this is incredible.
Yeah, no, a lot of people envy the spot that you're in, but yeah, like you said, the FlexCast app, eaglefc.com, Friday, January 28th, a hell of a card. Again, I think I've publicly said it multiple times. Once they made the announcement of a stateside show, I was all in because everybody can cover LFA and Victor, and I'm not hating on Fury FC, but I didn't see everyone jumping the bandwagon to get over to Eagle FC. So I'm getting on board right away. Give me a train ticket, get me on board with Eagle FC, and part of it is because of the fights they're putting together. And people can say what they want about a Rashad Evans coming back or the main event. I'm just gonna watch what's in front of me, and I'm gonna enjoy what's in front of me because I know the people behind it, and I know the people involved with it. And I know it's a great promotion, and I can't wait to see what comes of 2022. And Kevin Lee fighting in March. I think it's March? Do you remember the date?
I think it's March 11th, is what I was told.
So it's about 6 days before my birthday. Like, why? Where else would I rather be? There's no.
Make it happen, bro. Make it happen, Miami style, bro.
I mean, and I had told myself I had plans to go to UFC 272. So if I could turn around a 2-week trip of UFC 272 and then Eagle FC, I mean, sign me up. That's how you do in 2022. That's why conversations with Ray Flores matter to me so much off camera, because those are the types of plans I try to put together for, myself. But man, Ray, I've had a great time talking to you, like a great time. And I hope it's not 3 years from the next time I have you on. I know it's been a while since you and I spoke on a media platform, but you're always, and I say this not because you hear it, I say it because it's true, a great friend, a great mentor. And, we talked about it earlier, but man, I can't put into words what you've done for me just as a person and not just as a guy in the media. But there are times I watch you and I watch you with envy, but there's no one. And one thing I'll credit you with, if people don't know this, you've gotten your brother heavily involved. And
Yeah.
you and your brother have all had great friendships, and I respect the hell out of both of you. So easy to get caught up in the careers that you had, but for you to bring so many people with you along the way, and your brother works his ass off as well. I'm not taking anything from him,
Yeah.
but man, like you're truly, truly one of the very rare talents in this sport. My hat's off to you all day long.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I love the work that you do on a consistent basis. You do it on your own. You are built by yourself. And I think it's only a matter of time. And I've told you this before, off camera, on camera, whatever. I think it's only a matter of time before you get to a bigger platform and keep showcasing your ability, because you do have a wonderful knowledge and background on the sport. You're learning about it. You're trying to get better and better from it. You're constantly diving into books and interviews, et cetera, et cetera. That's when you separate yourself from everybody else. But yeah, my brother does work very hard. He's actually calling the fights tonight with Gary Russell Jr., Mark Maxayo. He does the undercards as well. I'm very proud of my little brother for how far he's come and how much further he has to go. But if we can, the further I go, the more that I want to be able to open up doors for the younger generation. I know I keep saying younger generation. The reason why I say it is because when you're young in our business, it's not easy to get a break. You really have to be right place, right time. But if you can have someone to be like, look, I remember I was in your position. And to be honest with you, Mike, the position that when you started with XFO and et cetera, I feel like I'm like you and I have that kind of hunger. Even though I've been fortunate to work with, knock on wood, you know what I mean? Like with all these different promoters and networks, and been very blessed to do what I love to do for a living, but I still have the hunger. The hunger only increases the more you do. The more you do, the more I want, the more that I want to keep doing as much as I can and learning and growing and being inspired. I'm inspired every single day by coaches, by fighters, by trainers. Big Ten Wrestling, for instance, and I'll leave you with this. The Brands brothers, Tom Brands and Terry Brands. Tom Brands is the head coach of Iowa, 1996 Olympic gold medalist. His brother, Terry, was a 2000 bronze medalist. What they've been able to do at Iowa, leading them to 4 national championships, that's special. Talking with those guys, learning their philosophy on life. They're like, if you're up by a decision, why don't you get a major decision? If you get a major decision, why don't you go for a tech fall? If you get a tech fall, you need to go and get the pin. There's always room to get better. That's what I've taken away from them. I'm very inspired by a lot of people, and I thank you very much for your time, bro.
No, thank you. I'm going to let you go on one more. I know you're a football guy. You have a Super Bowl prediction for me.
Super Bowl prediction, man. Oh boy, geez. Look, to me, the firepower of the Chiefs, until I see Pat Mahomes get beat, I'm not gonna believe it. And I know this sounds crazy, but I do think we get a Super Bowl rematch. Tom Brady is still Tom Brady. To be the man, you got to beat the man, as Ric Flair likes to say. And Tom Brady he's talking about next year. Mike, he's talking about next year already. What? The guy is the greatest quarterback of all time. I want to see the rematch of the Chiefs and the Bucs, SoFi Stadium. By the way, Snoop Dogg on the halftime show. Oh yeah, baby. Let's make it happen. I can't wait. Chiefs and Bucs Super Bowl rematch.
I'll say this. I said it at Christmas. I said, if Brady gets to another Super Bowl and wins, I'm all in. I need him to get 10 Super Bowls before he retires. I don't care how long. Like, I need a 10 championship. I hear about Bill Russell, all that. No, I need 10 championship Tom Brady. But Ray, thank you so much for everything, and I really appreciate your time. And I'm gonna steal. I know he cuts Ric Flair-esque promos when he's inside the UFC octagon. But one thing I'll say to you, and I've kind of carried it with me to start off 2022, and I'm not picking favorites here in the fight game, but I've been saying it to a lot of people around me, especially those I respect in my circle. You obviously are where you are, but I'm obviously hopefully putting plans in place to move forward this year. So I'll just quote the great Michael Chandler, and I'll say, I'll see you at the top.
Oh, I love it. Hey, also, one thing I want to see from Eagle, we need an appearance from Hasbulla. That's my man. That is my favorite follow on social media. We need an appearance by Hasbulla. That guy is one of the most amazing social media combat sports follows on the planet today. I love Hasbulla. He needs to be making his Eagle FC debut. I know he's friends with Habib, so hopefully we make that happen, bro.
You can follow Ray on Twitter at SBR Flores. You can find him on Instagram, Ray Flores. Ray, thank you so much for everything. I know we talked a lot, but I do appreciate your time. Man, just keep doing all the great things that you're doing, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, bro. Later, man.